Today is August 23rd, 2021. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Catherine Templeton in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Ma'am, where were you born?
I was born in Bartlesville, Oklahoma at 313 and a half South Johnstone, right in the middle of Bartlesville, in an apartment above the Zoffados brothers at that time.
When's your birthday?
November the 11th, 1928.
1928.
So it's 11/11/28.
Yes. Who is your father?
John Joseph Adams
And your mother?
was Leora Marie Kaywood Adams.
What was her maiden name?
Her maiden name was Kaywood, Caywood.
Okay. Mhm. What type of work did your father do?
Well, at the time I was born, he was working at the Coleman Dairy in Dewey.
Mm-hmm. What are your earliest memories of Bartlesville?
Oh, I've always loved Bartlesville. I just, I was born here and married here, raised the children here, and I had hoped to die here.
Now, did you know Mr. Zoffness?
What?
Did you know Mr. Zoffness?
Yes.
He said you were born over their store.
Yes, he was a little short guy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Tell me about him.
Well, he was quite a businessman, very diligent in his work. I mean, he was a real good businessman, and that's really all I know about him, except because at that time I was pretty small,
Yes.
and even as a teenager growing up and that sort of thing. Most all the businessmen here were good people, and just starting, the world was just beginning to open up to them.
Where did you start school?
And I started at Garfield for the first year. And Mrs. Lastly was my first grade teacher.
Mrs. Lastly?
I was started when I was 5 years old.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the Christmas parties that Frank Phillips threw for the kids?
Oh, yes.
Tell me about those.
Well, that old burnt-out building where, where Martin's is now, was a big department store, and I can't remember, Boston.
The Boston
I think it was
store.
Boston
Yes.
store. And it was all burnt out, and there were just little tiers of brick, laying down, and it was all kind of, just a lot of debris, in there. And Frank Phillips would come down there and hand out the big candy. It was those mesh candy canes, kind of like things, and they had hard candy and apples and oranges and a banana in it and a silver dollar. And we'd go down there.
Yes. This is every year, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
This is every year at Christmas?
Every year. Oh, we looked forward to that.
Yes.
Because there weren't many silver dollars roaming around at that time.
Yes. How did the Depression affect you and your family?
Well, at the time that I was little, I didn't really think too much about being poor, because everybody was poor or they were making ends meet, that sort of thing. Because it's my understanding, Phillips didn't lay off people back in those days. They just cut their salary so that they at least have bread on the table. And now this is what I was told by some of the old retirees that at that time in my life that would talk about it.
Was your father still working at the dairy?
No, I think he went to work at because they moved to Bartlesville, and I think he worked as mostly for Inch Plumbing. Do you remember them?
What was the name?
It was called Inch.
Inch Plumbing. Okay.
INCH.
What did he do for him?
It could be ENCH.
What did he do for the plumbing? What did he do?
Just plumbing. I mean, go out and whatever plumbers do.
Yes.
But it was hard to get work.
Yes.
And there wasn't much but, only when they had and needed him. But he finally left Oklahoma and went to Texas to get work. And of course, my mother was left with 2 children, and that sort of thing. So she made the best do. She never went on welfare. She never had any help from anyone. She worked for Mrs. Dow that lived out, the Dows worked for city service, and they lived out in the 1500 block of Dewey. And she walked to work from where we lived on behind the behind the old courthouse, and on about the 300 block right there. It was called 3rd Street then. There wasn't a boulevard or anything. And so we lived in the rooming house there.
What stores did you shop in Bartlesville in those days?
We shop? Well, usually it was Mac Grocery, because it was right there across the street from and the Dunlap Bakery. And on Mrs. Dunlap didn't open on Sunday, but she came down to get all the stuff out of her counters, and she put it in little sacks. And when we'd see the light on from our house, because we lived on the 2nd floor, we would run over there, or my brother would go over there and get a sack of those things, leftover donuts and all the kind of pastry that she had in these little sacks. I think it was for a nickel or dime. She practically gave them to us, and that sort of thing. But she never opened up her business on Sunday.
Okay.
And Mac Groceries, of course, was all open around there. And it's my understanding, Ruth and Doc Brown. Ruth was one of the daughters, I think, of Mac, but I don't know. But we always traded with Ruth and Doc Brown when they had their grocery store downtown across from Cresses, where Cresses was. And then it became a supermarket with the IGA.
Yes. Where did you attend middle school? Where did you attend middle school?
Where do I what?
Your middle school, after Garfield, what school did you go to attend?
I went to Jefferson, the 2nd grade through the 6th.
Okay.
And then I went to Central High. And about that time, I was ready to go into the 10th grade. They moved the 10th grade out to Call High. And that way you had the 11th and 12th and the 10th, where before they'd had 11th and 12th and 2 years of college.
What year did you graduate high school? What year did you graduate high school?
I didn't graduate because I got married.
Okay.
And I was still in school. And so we got married. And in fact, he had to come and get me out of school to go get married, because he was just on a 3-day pass.
What year did you get married?
What?
What year did you get married?
October the 16th, 1944.
Okay. In your schooling, who is your favorite teacher?
Oh, I think it was probably Mrs. Moss, my 3rd grade teacher. She always had a kind of a built-in thing that was on rollers where she could move it around. And she always put whatever we were studying, like a country or anything. One year we were studying Japan, and she had a volcano, and the children would help do this, and she was just a beautiful person. But then also Mrs. I'm having a hard time now. She was tall and thin, and I even talked to her all through my life. I know it'll come to me probably tonight sometime. I should have known that, but she taught there too. And Mrs. Glover was 6th grade teacher. She was a beautiful person.
Mrs. Glover?
She had the big old birthmark on her face. But she was a beautiful person, and she taught art along with, I think, history. I'm not positive of that, but I know we took art from her, and she was just wonderful. And later in life, I found that Hugh Jackson was someone from here, from Phillips, from Texas. It was his aunt, and he used to come to Bartlesville to visit. And I thought, well, I know you because I met her nephew when he came here to visit. So here we meet again. So,
Who was principal of Central High School?
Who's what?
Who was principal of Central?
Mary Ware was the one principal for all the schools
Okay.
when I was in grade school.
Tell me about her.
Well, she was a typical school marm, I'd call her. She was tall and thin and had white hair and funny. She was really a funny person and a smart person, and everybody that I know of loved her.
Yes.
She was great.
So you made it through the Depression okay, with no problem.
The what?
You made it through the Great Depression.
Yes,
okay.
my grandparents and my folks were sufferers of the Depression.
Okay.
And I wrote an article once for something I was given for DAR about our grandparents were the first conservationists. They saved everything. They used it up. They never just threw something away unless it was just absolutely worthless.
Yes.
We saved the tin foil out of our gum wrappers, and we saved rubber bands. We saved paper. We used paper. You know, if you had a little scrap of paper, you saved it because that's something you could write a note on, because we didn't have Kleenex and all the throwaway stuff you have now. All of us little girls carried hankies, and boys had hanky in their back pocket and and usually a pocket knife. All the little boys carried pocket knives back in those days. Now they cleaned their fingernails or stuff with it, but they always had a knife, you know. But they never played with it, you know. It was something that they had to use.
Yes. What games did you play in school?
What games did I play? Oh, I won a prize. I was played jacks, jumped rope, climbed trees, anything, you know, outdoors. And back in those days, you could do things like that.
Yes.
I used to, when I was in the third grade, I would take the little kids down to the river. I know that sounds terrible now, but we would go down to where, you know, the spill goes over there at the dam, down below where the water would trickle down, and we could wade in it right there. And the little kids, it was hot, really hot in the summer, and no air conditioning. We just had little fans. But, you know, some of the little kids were still in diapers, but they had their clothes on, but they still were not trained. But we'd always bring them home, because we lived right there on 3rd Street, and you just had to walk down, you know, just down about 3 or 4 blocks to go to the river.
Yes.
And but there was always a bunch of children there. It wasn't like you went down with just 2 children. They all went to the river because that's the only place to cool off.
Did you climb the mound?
Did I what?
Did you climb the mound?
Oh, yes. But that was way far for me to go, and I had to wait till there's somebody, because our family never had a car. So I had to wait till my uncle would come to town or something like that, and where they could take us out to do things like that. I went on one Easter egg hunt out there, and I just ran. You know, I thought we were supposed to go for the golden egg, and it was bound to be a little ways in. And that sort of thing. Because I lived over on 416.5 South Seneca, and I had someone take me by it last month. It's still there. It's a stone gray garage apartment with a red tile roof, and it still looks nice.
Where were you December 7th, 1941?
Where
were you when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor?
I was in the now, when they, I'm not sure about that. I was in the Lyric Theater when war was declared, and that's a different time. So you probably know how many days went between the one and the other.
I think they bombed the 7th and war was declared on the 8th.
They what?
And war was declared the next day on the 8th.
Okay, well, then we were in the Lyric Theater because Henry and I were talking, and that's where we both were, but we didn't know each other that much then. I mean, you know, he would be in there with a bunch of boys, and I'd be with my girlfriends, but we weren't at the dating. We weren't dating then, and that sort of thing.
When you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor, what did you think?
Well, it was just a chilling effect to know that someone would do something like that. You know, it was because, see, leading up to it, we studied in school a lot about what the Germans were doing, what the Japanese, but it was kind of like one of those things that you read the stories. We had those weekly readers,
Yes.
and I know I couldn't afford the dime every week to do it, so I had to sit with someone else that had one, and we studied all those things, and you knew about it because the Japanese were buying up all of our scrap metal to build warships with and things like that. But and the newspapers would come out with a lot of pictures and things like that. I know there were a lot of sayings the kids said about that time about the Germans and that sort of thing. So, I meant to turn this off. And
what were the sayings that the kids said? What were the sayings that the kids said about the Germans?
well, some of them, it was, I'm trying to think. It's kind of hard to think about those things because some of them weren't nice, and I wouldn't repeat them. But it's just a little. They don't even know what they're saying. You know, it's that sort of thing, and but we were all aware. Not near as much as the children when they were in school and had to worry about an atom bomb, you know, and that sort of thing. But it was just chilling, you know. But it wasn't like they were taking things away from us because we didn't have that much to begin with. We played outside. We made our own games. We didn't have a lot of toys. Some children had bicycles. My brother finally had a bicycle, but I never did. In fact, the first bicycle I owned, my husband bought for me.
After the war started, did you help with the war effort, like the rubber drives?
Oh yes, we all donated dimes for the war bonds and things like that, and then they accumulated it in school, you know, and then bought war bonds with it. And we did everything that we could.
Did you help collect metal, scrap metal, or rubber or paper for the...
Do what?
Did the schools collect scrap metal and rubber?
Oh yes, anything. That's what we did with our tinfoil. We made those big tinfoil balls, and you know, we'd save it and wrap it up, and the same thing with rubber bands. Anything that you could save like that, you did. Everybody did it.
Where was this? Where did you take this when you collected it?
Well, at school we turned it in, so I'm not sure how they handled it, but it was, I know that some of the ladies in DAR started the first, I think, Red Cross, and wrapped bandages and things like that. But that was the older generation, you know, at that time. They probably weren't as old as I thought they were, but...
In school, did you follow the progress of the war?
Did I what?
In school, did you follow the progress of the war?
Oh, yes. We studied it. Guess we discussed. You had, what do you call it? I'm trying to think. Current events.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, we discussed it. That you discussed it and went over it, and everybody, because everyone was aware of it, and we didn't have very many. Like all the boys, young teenage boys, went off to war, and when the draft come along, families were just, disintegrated because they had to go. There wasn't any question. They just went because we were all patriotic and we were going to save our country. And then also, the families that they had to leave went home to mom and pop because they didn't have enough money to navigate on their own. So they came home, and that's where you had a lot of families came home to mom and pop because they didn't have anywhere to live. Or they had a place to live, but they didn't have a money enough. And certainly back in those days, they didn't give the servicemen, they didn't have that much money to give them.
Yes. Tell me about the day you got married.
Oh, well, I went to school. And I think I was in Bible class. And when I told this to my son, he said, "Mother, they didn't have Bible in school." And I said, "Well, Sonny, yes, they did. That's where I was." And it was out of Call High. And I was trying to think of the lady's name, but I can't. But Mrs. Redding was the one that I had to go to for a counselor I guess to try to talk me out of what I was doing. And I said, and Henry I went over to the window because I heard somebody tooting. And I went over to the window and I said, "Yes, he's waiting for me right now." And so we got married at the Baptist parsonage, just 2 or 3, I don't know where it was, the second or third house down from Central High, because that's where the Baptist parsonage was, and that's where I went to church. And and we had to wait a little while till the 2 kids, which was Connie Schroff and Jean Stapleton, and I'm sure you know Jean Stapleton. And they stood up with us in front of the fireplace there at, it was Brother Temperman. I have it somewhere, but, and he married us there in front of the fireplace. And then we went out to our mother, when Mother I lived, and had something. And then Mrs. Moore, and it's a girl I went to school with from the 1st grade. I thought I just went from the 2nd to the 6th with her, but no, she still calls me. And the 1st grade, because they lived where they went to Garfield the first year, and then they moved over on the east side further, and so they went to Jefferson. I went to school. I have a picture of my 2nd grade class over here, and some of the girls are in there that you probably know. And we had Mildred Conover. Do you remember her? Okay. She lived right, there was an alley going down our street there on 416 half South Seneca, and she lived 2 houses over, facing Seneca. What's the next street over? I got to get all my Indian names.
Is it Wyandotte?
Huh?
Is it Wyandotte? Is it Wyandotte?
Wyandotte? No, Wyandotte was the other way.
Okay.
Yeah, but back of us was, I thought I'd ever forget that, but I knew all those streets, Quapaw and...
There's Choctaw.
Okay, Choctaw.
Okay.
Choctaw, and I need to get my Indian names. And they lived facing that way. In fact, the classics, the Tatros lived over on that street too, and
Yes.
they lived there forever, I think, almost all through Gyla's life. You know, she was such a pretty girl, and she's the one that she's married to Classic, and they used to live by us over there on Brookline. But your lives intertwine
Yes.
constantly with people.
I didn't ask, did you go to the Santa Pool?
No, I didn't work at Santa Pool, but I got to go there because my mother worked at city service
Yes.
later. She got on at city service. And so I had a pass to go to, but my brother worked there, and he worked and did the backwashing or whatever it is, but his hair turned green. He was out there. So.
Tell me about Santa Pool.
Santa Pool?
Yes.
Oh, well, it was a wonderful place. It was the only swimming place in town other than maybe Country Club. You know, I don't know where they had a pool back in those days or not, but everybody went, you know, and the Phillips people and the city service people, and I suppose the other, because there was TRW at that time. They
Rita
called it
Pump.
Rita Pump
Yes.
when I was little, and it's changed names, and you had Price People, but now they didn't have Price Building there at that time, but they had the company, and I don't know where they were located, but you had all these different businesses, and when I worked at the Elks later in life, we had all those business people out there. I already had known them from being small,
Yes.
you know.
Now, after you were married, did your husband was in service, wasn't he?
He's what?
Your husband was in service?
Oh yes, he was in Navy. He was in service then.
Okay. So he had to leave. What did you do after he left?
I went to school, but then the next, let's see, we were married on a Monday, and I think he had to go back to the service on Thursday morning, and I didn't see him I didn't see him, you know, just letters, and until our first anniversary, and that's when his ship came back in, and he called. Of course, back in those days, you were censored because you couldn't write where you were because we were in the war, you know, and so everything was hush hush. Those old signs. Something about your lips could sink a ship.
Loose lips sink ships.
Yes,
Yes.
and that sort of thing. So he had sent me a hint, but I thought, well, you know, I can't just get on a train and go to California and not know for sure he's going to be there. So he finally called, and he says, I want you out here. So I got on a train, and we had to go to Kansas City and then go back to California, and it was just full of service people. You know, you couldn't hardly, they were just sitting on top of each other in the aisles because there wasn't that many seats on the thing, but he was there. And so when he was there, we were there for about a week because I'd wasted a lot of time because not getting out there in time. And so his best buddy, because he was over the radio gang, and his best buddy was Harlan Jackson, and his wife's name was Helen. And she was there, and I met her for the first time, and she had a little baby and was pregnant. And so they got together and they decided, well, their ship they had heard was going to be back in 3 months. They didn't know where it was going to be, but they thought it was going to be in San Francisco. So they talked me into going back home with Helen because I could help her with the baby, and she couldn't do a lot because she's pregnant. And her sister lived around the corner, and her husband was in the Seabees, or the Seabees?
Yes, Seabees.
Coast Guard, something like that. And so we were three, you know, what you call war widows, even though we was young. But she was a little bit more mature than Helen and I.
Was this in
And,
San Francisco? Was this in San Francisco? Was this in San Francisco?
Yeah, San Diego.
Oh, San Diego. San Diego.
But then when his ship did come back in, well, we got on the train and went to San Francisco. And they were there for about 3 or 4 weeks. So so we were together. And of course, I got real acquainted with the radio gang because they were all there, and some of them had wives, and some of them, their wives couldn't get there or something. But so we had, and these are the guys that we went to all of our Navy reunions and saw.
What
So,
ship was he on?
it was the USS Carlisle,
Okay.
number 69.
Yes. Okay.
And I stood on the pier in San Diego when I went out to see him that time and waved goodbye to him. I mean, their ship was going, and watched his ship go out. And I explained to my daughter once, she was watching TV when all these guys were having to tell their husbands goodbye, you know, and everything. And she was just going on and on about it. And I said, Sharon, I did that. And I was very young and alone on the deck, on the pier, and waved goodbye to your dad as he went out. I didn't know where I'd ever see him again because we were at war. But I said, you know, you live through those things. You do what you have to do when you have to do it.
Yes.
And you don't think that much about it. I mean, it's heartbreaking and it's heart-wrenching because you don't know what's going to happen. So
That's right.
it's, and I had to deliver one summer while I was still in high school, or junior high, I guess. Remember the telegraph office used to be right across the street from Phillips, where it was right there on the alley. It's right there where the the Phillips History Museum used to be. There was a little telegraph office, and they had a bench outside, and so 2 girls, and I was one of them, we deliver telegrams to Phillips, city service, and business people, just where we could walk. We didn't drive or anything. Well, we weren't old enough, but we did this as a summer job. And so I had to deliver, and we always said we hoped we never had to deliver one of those death messages, especially with service people. And I got one day, so it was all has a black rim around it, you know. And I had to take it, and it was to the Burlingame Hotel because she worked on the desk there at the hotel. And that was, those stairs up to that landing where I had to take him was the hardest steps because I didn't know how I was going to do it to deliver that. And of course she just, you know, almost collapsed. But there were gentlemen there to help her. But that was very heart-wrenching.
You recall her name?
Hmm?
Do you recall her name?
No, I don't, but she was a lovely lady, and young, you know, probably just out of school. Or she might have been a little bit older, I don't know. But, and people were getting those signs. We were hearing about our school kids, you know, Ben Silva, you know, he was killed. And we knew that because everybody knew Pete, you know.
Yes.
And he was so good, and Mary, his wife, and all those kids. We kept in contact with each other all these years. Of course, they're both gone now. Practically everybody I know is dead.
Yeah.
Is dead, just about. And but we had a wonderful life. But it was a lot of it was due to growing up in Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
What'd you do on VJ Day when the war ended? That was August of '45.
To see, I was with Helen, at that time. So I was in California, and I think Evelyn, her sister, she said, we need to go and to a place where there's servicemen and take them out for a meal. And that's what we did. We didn't know them, but they were people. I mean, they were,
Yes.
we knew they were good people.
Yeah.
And they were people that were going, probably hoping to go home, and that sort of thing with their wives. And but we did. She said, we can't do it for our husbands, but we need to do it for somebody who can't get to their wives. You know, we need to say how good it is that the war is over, you know, with Japan. And because I had an uncle that was in the Bataan Death March. And in fact, Henry, on his 21st birthday, I think it was his 21st birthday, was in Japan.
What was your uncle's name?
It was during the occupation.
Yes. What was your uncle's name on the death
My
march?
husband's name?
No, your uncle's name. That was on the Bataan Death March.
The what?
Your uncle's name on the Bataan.
Rufus Darvin Adams.
Okay. Was he from here?
Oh, yes. But now, he didn't leave for service there. He went, during Depression, there wasn't anything for anyone to work, you know, and do things. So he went back east. And I think he drove a limousine or something. Yeah. But anyhow, he was immediately sent over. And I think it was at Corregidor, or what was the big collapse in Manila or Corregidor, yes, or one of those places. He was captured right away. And it was bad. He was one of those that came in down at Houston where they were just skin and bones, yes, just with skin hanging on their bones. And my dad was in Texas at that time, and he went over and got him just as soon as he was able to be taken out, you know, because they had every kind of disease and things that was, you know, and because he did talk to me a little bit about it, and he said, well, I said, well, how do you just keep going? And he says, because if you dropped, they bayoneted you, so you kept walking,
yes,
the best you could, yes, and that sort of thing. But you know, so a lot of people had to suffer a lot of things. So, and here at home, we were suffering because we read about this stuff, and you knew what some of your people were going through. Yes. But you know, we've had I wanted to tell you, he went on to go back and marry a girl back in New Jersey, and he had an electrical company, and he had 3 children, 3 boys, and grandchildren, and he had a good life, and I never heard him say anything bitter about anyone. He just was lucky to be alive, and just thank God, you know.
Yes. Now, when did your husband get home from the war? When did your husband get home from the war?
Well, let's see. When the war was over, he still had a little bit of time that he had to do, and so where I went home in November, came back to Bartlesville in November, he came home in March, and he was honorably discharged in March. But then, after we had 2 children, and Sharon was a baby, he got recalled during the Korean War because they wanted people that was in that kind of thing. And he said, our little boy had just had a ruptured appendix, and Dr. Denyer was here, and he took care of him. And so Henry wrote and asked for a deferment, and they told him, he says, you might as well not ask. But he said, well, I'm going to do it because I can't leave my family right now. And so he wrote, and he got a deferment. He's a wonderful letter writer.
Yes.
He's perfect. And so he thought, well, so he got that deferment. Well, then they sent him another notice, and he wrote another deferral notice, and they gave him another deferment.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, when he got the third one, they said report. He said, he wrote and told me, well, the war's just about over, and he said, so I probably don't need to go. And yes, well, he lucked out because he got to Treasure Island, there in the Oakland, you know, off the Oakland Bay Bridge, overlooking Alcatraz, and how they shoot them out on different things. And this lady, Lieutenant something, or she had a title longer than that, and she said, he kept telling her, he says, I don't know all this stuff anymore. That's been 3 or 4 years. You know, he says, so she said, well, what have you been doing? And he said, well, I've been doing clerical work and working in an office. And she said, well, let me check. We need somebody over in the court-martial area. And and she asked him a few more questions about him, what he did. And so they changed his rates. There was a 2-week, what do you call it, a naval something. Anyhow, there was a 2-week window where they could change your rate. Mm-hmm. So they changed his rate from radio to yeoman. Yeah. And so they put him in court-martial work. He did a real good job there. And they were going to send him back east when his time was up to go to officer training because they wanted to hold on to him. And, well, it sounded kind of good to him. And they said, oh, by the way, you have to sign on 10 more years. And Henry says, forget it. He says, I'm taking my family home, and we're going to start. He said, I've got a family to take care of. And he said, I'm going to forget it.
Yes.
And so he had a lot of good experience, and he took court reporting mm-hmm. in some school that they had out there. He was always in school. So before he went aboard ship, they sent him to A&M College down in Texas. Mm-hmm. And he went to, what's it called, some kind of electrical, well, it was for radio work, you know, because he was over the radio gang. And when he was in the radio gang, he was taking a message that was coming through, and it was from Bartlesville, Oklahoma. And he said, oh my, what has happened to Bartlesville, Oklahoma? Well, it was a thing about Frank Phillips made a speech and said that the world is running out of oil. Well, maybe at that time they hadn't discovered all this stuff in Saudi Arabia, you know, yeah. You need a Kleenex?
No.
Okay.
Whenever your husband was called up for Korea, what did you do?
When he did what?
When your husband was called up for Korea, what did you do?
I stayed home with 2 children. Mm-hmm. And it had got to be, in fact, we had a big snowstorm, and I couldn't get the doors open on the garage because they were swinged out, you know, and there was 15 inches of snow there, and I couldn't get those out. But I managed. Mm-hmm. And the neighbors were wonderful. They kind of kept an eye on me, you know, at night. And so finally it was no morning, noon, or night, you know, because everything was just so, and I said, oh, I need to go to work. So I called his boss at that time, and I said, I just, because they called me to check on me ever so often, and he worked for Paul Parker, I think, at the time, and in the legal department. And so I said, he says, I need to go to work. And I have a lady that lives just right up the street, that wants to take care of my children for me, because she just has one child and she wants some company, to play with. And I really loved her. She had a little boy same age as my little boy. Both of them are named Gary. And her name was Novella Jordan. And they were a young married couple. He worked in Phillips in the Treasury Department with Henry when he left. But anyhow, Mr. Parker told me to go to Phillips and who to see. And I said, but if he gets stateside duty, he's coming home to get me and the family. And I said, so I don't know how long I'll be working. He said, well, you don't need to tell him that. Just tell him you need to work. And Phillips really took care of a lot of their people that were getting called back and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And they always knew that there would be a job for them when they came back. Mm-hmm. And so I worked up in the accounting department in filing vouchers and things like that for 3.5 months. When he got stateside duty, he said, I'm coming back as soon as I can get there. And so he got one of those escort things, because we didn't have that much money, for all that stuff that you go through to travel. And so he got an escort for some boy it was in Kansas. I'm trying to think of the name. It was a double name. It'll come to me. But so he came home first to get us, and he still had the escort. It was still on the train. And we went to, they were going to go ahead and take the casket and the body to Kansas. And he came home and got us. And we went to Kansas for the funeral, so because they could present that. And then we came home and got ready to go. It's getting hot in here, isn't it?
No.
And so then we packed up everything and went to California. And we lived in Navy housing there in New Albany. If you crossed the street, you were in Berkeley. As well. But it was nice, Navy housing there. And so we lived there, and he got, worked 4 days and then got off 3 days or something like that, or vice versa. And so Archie Boyd, that lived here in Bartlesville, he came out. He was there on Treasure Island, and he came out to visit us. And so we had we were there about a year till they let him out.
And then you came back to Bartlesville?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Been here ever since.
We couldn't get away from Bartlesville. He had all kinds of opportunities to go in court reporting because he'd had the schooling and he was really good at everything. And but it was always in a big city, and he just didn't want to raise his family in a big city. Mm-hmm. And so we hightailed it back to Bartlesville just as soon as we could. But it's Bartlesville's just been real good. It's been real good to us, and we've had a good life, a wonderful life, and raised our children here. But we couldn't keep them here. But they're in Oklahoma. One's in Duncan, one's in Claremore, and I hope I'm not leaving out anything. I get to talking and I rattle quite a bit, but well, we used to get in line, during the war, because you didn't know what you were going to get, but you got in line because whatever it was, somebody could use, and you didn't know where coffee or tea, and then of course you got coupons if you had a car.
Yeah, this is rationing.
Yes.
Yes.
And you had coupons before you could even buy anything if they had it, and people couldn't drive more than 35 miles an hour, anywhere. And you couldn't just go buy new tires. Most of them were recaps, retreads, well, I guess what they called them. And so you had a lot of do's and don'ts. Can you imagine trying to get the country to they can't even get them to wear a mask, let alone to save their life.
Yes.
And because they don't want to be told what to do.
What was the worst thing about rationing?
Well, not as much on me as my mother, as the older people that run the houses and that sort of thing. Is the coffee was terrible because it was not pure coffee. It was, they put chicory in it or something like that. And I didn't drink coffee at that time, so it didn't bother me, but it did my mother. And it's just the availability of things like hose. I don't think they had nylons right around, but they were rayon, anything, and they had the seam up the back where you had to always put the seam. Yes, there was a lot of things that we're discussing about it. But when you're going through it, and it's just like childhood, You think you're never going to get out of childhood and get to be a teenager, and after you're through it, you kind of wish you were going back to it. I wrote a little poem once about. You want to hear it?
Sure.
Okay. Once I was a wee little girl with not a care in the whole wide world but to wash my hands and comb my hair, and when mother called to hurry there. But now I'm in the grown-up stage. It's like being caught in one large maze. I can't go back, but I must travel on till I reach what's known as the great beyond, heaven. And it's kind of like life is kind of like that.
Yes. What did you give up during the war? Did you have to give anything up during the war?
Give up?
Yes. Did you have to give up anything during the war?
During the war?
Yes.
Well, you gave up doing a lot of things. The main thing is, but you had house parties. You didn't have anywhere to go for teenagers. We had the Bartlesville Pharmacy that was there on the corner. One corner was Anthony's on the south corner, and the Bartlesville Pharmacy and Montgomery Ward's, and then Metropolitan, back in the days when I was Metropolitan. And back in those days, you didn't pick up anything in there that said Made in Japan. My mother, if I thought something was cute, don't buy that. That sort of thing. So, and it was later Greens, and whatever. But Montgomery Ward's was there forever until, I guess, Arvest has it now, don't they? Or is that? No. Who is it that has?
I'm not sure who's in there now.
I'm not sure. I thought somebody did. Mm-hmm. But you had the Union Bank on the other end. Mm-hmm. And usually the city service used the Union Bank, and the Phillips used the First National Bank. It was First National Bank then. And some of this. And so I was going to look at my thing here. I think I'm probably keeping you longer than you wanted to be here, but I get around. I tell you. Okay. Oh, we had Victory Gardens.
Victory Gardens, yes.
You remember the Victory Gardens?
Yes.
Everybody had a Victory Garden. If you had a little patch this big, you planted something that would grow that you could use. And, and back in those days, everybody just got paid once a month. You didn't have any of this ever. twice a month or weekly or anything like that. And most everybody charged at the grocery stores. You run a tab, so to speak, all except Safeway. I think that was always cash.
What grocery stores did you shop?
Well, we shopped mostly at, my mother always used Ruth and Doc Brown, which was later IGA,
Yes, okay.
because they knew them, and they were part of Bartlesville, you might say, and that sort of thing. So they were, let's see. Oh, I was going to tell you, the reason I was born in downtown Bartlesville is that my mother and dad lived in Dewey and on the Coleman Dairy. And so my grandparents lived up above in those they were pretty nice apartments up there at one time. And they lived up there. And Mother had come to town to see the Armistice Day parade. Because back in my days, Armistice Day was the celebration of the World War I being over. And my mother used to say they would just take tin pans and a spoon and go out in the yard and parade around and do that. But at that time, the school always, Bartlesville always let their school children off a half a day, because all of the schools all around Bartlesville, and including Bartlesville, Dewey and Copan and different ones that are around here, and they all had their bands, and they all came and had an Armistice Day parade. And later was to be called Memorial Day, and now it's Veterans Day, which is good. And I wanted to say something about the veterans. Henry had to have practically 24-hour care when he got dementia finally. He was wonderful. He never got cross. I had a beautiful time taking care of him. It was tiring, but it was hard. But we had to put him at the Veterans Center in Claremore. But we had to pay for it because he was he didn't have a war wound or anything. But they had a barbershop and a dentist and doctors there and nurses. And the nurses there were wonderful to him. And he, we didn't necessarily want him. I wanted him with me because we'd always been together. We were married for 75 years. And he died. Our anniversary was October the 16th, 1919, and he died on October the 26th. With all the family there, we were all there with him. And the stump funeral, they did a beautiful job. They have quite a ceremony. They came and they wrap him in an American flag, and they have a procession going out where we all went through him and downstairs and out to put into the hearse, and they have quite a ceremony, which is nice. But the nurses there just loved Henry, and they just took real good care of him.
Good.
I can't say enough nice things for him. I know other people maybe have different experiences, but all that I've ever heard is nice. But they did a beautiful job, and they just loved him. They just took care of him. It was wonderful.
I'd like to ask, today, when you hear the name Franklin Roosevelt,
What?
when you hear the name Franklin Roosevelt, what's your reaction?
What?
Franklin Roosevelt.
Oh, what about him? Well, as a kid, my grandparents were Republicans. And in Jefferson School, when I was there, it was Landon, wasn't there a Landon that was running at that time? And I don't know where it was against Roosevelt yet, but I grew up with Roosevelt as president practically all my life, you know, until he died. And I never had anything against him because, you know, he was there during the war. And of course, I didn't actually believe in keeping him forever. And he did have that third term, you know, was wonderful worth, I think. But, you know, you really don't know what a president does until after they're gone.
What about Harry Truman?
Well, you know, he was pretty good, as it turned out. And I think a lot of it was prestige that he didn't have going in. In other words, he was a businessman, haberdasher, you know. He ran a men's store. And a lot of times, they don't always give credence to someone in that if they don't come from the upper class, you know. But I know I'll go with Henry because he kept up with politics and because he had to associate with a lot of the senators and stuff and everybody that come because, you know, he worked for in the executive department for a good many years. He worked for John Houchin, who was president for 18 years.
Is it Phillips?
And then he worked for Leo Johnstone.
Yes, okay.
For 9 years, and then he worked for Pete Silas.
Yes. What about Dwight Eisenhower?
Oh, well, we all loved Ike. Who's to not to like Ike? We thought he was wonderful, and I never had it. You know, he came here to Bartlesville,
Yes.
and we got to see him and be with him, you know, and that's not be with him, but I mean, we were right there in the same room and heard speeches, and the same thing with Reagan, you know, when he came. And so we've had a good experience. And of course, if I wanted to know anything political, I'd just ask Henry because he knew, you know. He kept up with all the guys. He has letters from some of the senators that write and thank him for whatever you know, Henry helped with the first prayer breakfast, the governor's first prayer breakfast here. It was under Mr. Houchin's bailiwick, and so he told Henry to get it organized, and so he did. And he got a lovely letter from the senator that was, he said he never realized what went into something like that until his secretary was telling him what all Henry did and took care of.
Well, ma'am, this is an excellent interview. This is an excellent interview.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've just rattled.
Well, I want to thank you.
But I kind of like to do my bit, and like I said, I'm not I can't say I'm not well educated because I never quit learning, and we've always been around people that had PhDs and stuff like that. So we were always accepted.
Yes.
I'll put it that way.
Yes.
And that's where a lot of jealousy sometimes comes in because we got to do things that maybe they didn't, and they were more important than we were.
Well, ma'am, again, I want to thank you for the interview, and today is August 23rd, 2021. My name is Joe Todd. This has been an interview with Catherine Templeton in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Thank you.
You're welcome.